He has one of those sports car caps on, 81 inches around the waist. That's around the world in 80 days. His thigh at its most pulchritudinous 1 inches, and he is set tonight to grapple Jack MacArthur, who is outweighed by 422 pounds.
From Macon, Georgia, weighing 652, Farmer Humphrey.
At over 800 pounds, he was billed as one of the largest athletes in history. Crowds packed arenas just to see whether the ring could hold him. Promoters marketed him as a human phenomenon, and newspapers treated him like a walking spectacle. Happy Humphrey, the Georgia farmhand turned professional wrestler, packed arenas wherever he went. He shared the road with a young Harley Race, became one of wrestling's most unforgettable attractions, and later found himself at the center of a groundbreaking medical case study that earned him a place in the Guinness Book of World Records. But behind the astonishing numbers and carnival-like fascination was a daily reality that few spectators ever saw. The same size that made him famous also became his greatest burden, defining nearly every aspect of his life as his health steadily declined. Then, years after the cheers had faded, doctors proposed a radical plan that would transform his body and ultimately change the course of his life in ways neither he nor the wrestling world could have imagined. This is the remarkable story of Happy Humphrey, the 800-pound phenomenon whose extraordinary size made him a wrestling legend, whose struggle captivated the medical world, and whose legacy extends far beyond the spectacle that first made him famous. Happy Humphrey was born William Joseph Cobb in 1926 in Payne, Georgia. The now consolidated city of Payne covered barely 0.04 square miles and was home to only a few hundred residents at the time. A quiet, rural place where nothing about young William's life initially suggested what he would one day become. From the moment he was born, William Cobb defied all expectations. He reportedly weighed 18 pounds at birth, an astonishing figure for a newborn, and by the time he reached age 12, he was said to already weigh around 300 pounds. His size wasn't just unusual, it reshaped the entire structure of his childhood, forcing his family to adapt in ways they never could have anticipated. Exactly why William Cobb reached such an extraordinary size has long been the subject of speculation. One commonly repeated explanation is that he suffered from a pituitary gland disorder, a condition believed to have contributed to his relentless weight gain. While definitive medical records from his early years are limited, the theory has persisted for decades as one possible explanation for how he was able to reach and maintain a weight that seemed almost unimaginable. Despite his size, Cobb was anything but inactive. From an early age, he worked as a farmhand, where he quickly earned a reputation for remarkable strength. Family, friends, and neighbors recalled feats that bordered on legend, including one story claiming he could carry a 500-pound bale of cotton by himself. Whether every tale was true or embellished over time, there was little doubt that his immense frame was matched by equally impressive power. But farm life wasn't the future Cobb envisioned for himself. The long days of manual labor offered little excitement and even less opportunity. Then one day, a friend jokingly remarked that someone his size could probably make more money as a professional wrestler. It was meant as a laugh, but for Cobb, the suggestion lingered. The more he thought about it, the more it sounded like a chance to leave the fields behind and turn the very thing that made him different into a career. When William Cobb entered professional wrestling in 1951, he was introduced to audiences as Big Humphrey, a name inspired by Humphrey Pennyworth, the portly best friend from the popular Joe Palooka comic strip. It wouldn't take long for promoters to realize they had discovered something unlike anything fans had ever seen. His debut was as unconventional as the man himself. Instead of facing another wrestler, Big Humphrey was booked against a 7-foot, 600-pound bear named Big Ginger. Humphrey lasted nearly 30 minutes in the bizarre spectacle and walked away with a $200 payday, the equivalent of roughly $2,400 today. It was an unusual beginning, but it launched a career built on the simple question that sold tickets everywhere he went. How do you wrestle a man this big? Despite being promoted primarily as a special attraction, Humphrey proved he was more than a novelty. Later in 1951, he captured the NWA Texas Tag Team Championship, the only championship of his career. He also earned opportunities against some of the biggest names of wrestling's golden era, challenging Lou Thesz for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship and sharing the ring with legends such as Bobo Brazil and Fritz von Erich. In 1958, his persona evolved into the character that would make him famous. The character, Happy Humphrey, was presented as a cheerful, larger-than-life farm boy, complete with a pork pie hat and custom-made 93-inch waist trousers. The gimmick emphasized his friendly personality while embracing the spectacle of his incredible size, turning him into one of wrestling's most recognizable attractions. Happy Humphrey's defining rivalry came against another giant, Haystacks Calhoun. Together, the two super heavyweights weighed a staggering 1,350 pounds, an attraction almost impossible for fans to ignore. In 1959, they headlined a sold-out show at Madison Square Garden under the NWA Capital Wrestling banner, the promotion run by Vince McMahon Sr. that would eventually evolve into the WWF and, later, WWE. Although the match was promoted as a clash of unstoppable giants, Calhoun later admitted that Humphrey's immense size was becoming a liability. When I wrestled Happy, he weighed about 700 pounds, Calhoun recalled. But I could see as soon as we squared off that he was a fat 700 pounds. He had very poor balance, was easy to move around and easy to handle. I slammed him easier than the average size fellow. When I learned he was up to 800 pounds, I warned him that it wasn't healthy. It was an observation that would prove prophetic. During his career, the very size that had made Happy Humphrey one of wrestling's greatest attractions was rapidly becoming the greatest threat to his life. For all the excitement that surrounded Happy Humphrey's appearances, the reality of living at nearly 800 pounds was far less glamorous. Every aspect of his life required special accommodations, and even the simplest daily tasks became enormous challenges. Traveling for Humphrey demanded a vehicle built specifically for him. Promoters had the seats removed from his car, reinforced the suspension with extra shock absorbers, and modified the doors to make getting in and out possible. One of the car's regular stops was at a local meatpacking plant, where Humphrey would step onto an industrial meat scale, the only scale capable of accurately measuring his weight. Even wrestling promoters worried whether the ring itself could withstand the force of his massive frame. Away from the spotlight, Humphrey's size often turned him into an unwilling spectacle. Crowds stared wherever he went, and some restaurants refused to serve him simply because of his appearance. Everyday situations frequently became public ordeals. In one incident in Alabama, 8 police officers were reportedly needed to free him after he became trapped inside a telephone booth. On another occasion in New Orleans, he became wedged into a movie theater seat so tightly that police officers and welders had to cut away the surrounding seats before he could be released. By 1960, Humphrey's travels brought him together with a young wrestler named Harley Race. The two developed an unlikely friendship, and before long, Race became far more than a fellow wrestler. Still in his teens, Race was sometimes paid $25 to wrestle Humphrey, but more often he earned just $5 a day serving as his caretaker and driver. He chauffeured Humphrey from town to town in the modified car, helping him with the countless tasks that his size made impossible to do alone. The most difficult responsibility, however, was helping Humphrey bathe. In his autobiography, King of the Ring, Race recalled that ordinary showers simply couldn't accommodate Humphrey's enormous body. The solution was as extraordinary as it was humbling. Race remembered laying Humphrey on the ground outdoors, covering him with liquid soap, scrubbing him with a household mop, and rinsing him off with a garden hose. It was an intimate glimpse into the daily reality behind one of wrestling's biggest attractions. A man whose fame was built on his incredible size, yet whose everyday life depended on the kindness and assistance of those around him. By the early 1960s, however, it was becoming painfully clear that the lifestyle which had made Happy Humphrey a wrestling sensation could not last forever. His weight was continuing to climb, his mobility was rapidly declining, and the clock was beginning to run out. By 1962, the life that had made Happy Humphrey famous was catching up with him. At just 34 years old, his body was beginning to fail under its own weight. Simply getting out of bed had become a struggle, and walking more than a few steps left him exhausted. To rest, he often needed to sit across two chairs because a single one could no longer support him. Professional wrestling was no longer an option. A serious heart condition forced Humphrey into retirement, ending a career that had been built around his extraordinary size, but leaving the ring only accelerated his decline. Without the constant travel and physical demands of wrestling, his weight climbed even higher, eventually exceeding 900 pounds. Desperate to regain control, Humphrey tried to limit his eating, but years of deeply ingrained habits proved difficult to overcome. Stories of his appetite had become almost mythical, with reports claiming he could consume as many as 15 whole chickens in a single sitting. He had even undergone an earlier operation to remove approximately 100 pounds of fatty tissue, only to regain the weight in short order. It was becoming increasingly clear that conventional approaches would not save his life. That same year, Humphrey made a decision that would define the next chapter of his life. He agreed to become a patient and research volunteer at the Medical College of Georgia's Clinical Investigation Unit in Atlanta, allowing physicians to study one of the most extreme cases of obesity ever documented while attempting to help him lose enough weight to survive. Under the supervision of Dr. Wayne Greenberg, Humphrey entered an extraordinary 83-week medical program unlike anything that had been attempted before. He lived under constant observation inside the clinic, where nearly every aspect of his daily life was carefully controlled. To ensure researchers could accurately measure the effects of his diet, he was not permitted to exercise, as even sweating could alter the study's results through fluid loss. Instead, the focus was entirely on nutrition. Humphrey consumed only about 1,000 calories per day, rotating through 56-day cycles of 3 carefully designed meal plans. One emphasized protein, another carbohydrates, and a third fat, allowing researchers to compare how each affected his metabolism and weight loss. Every meal, every drink, and every pound lost was meticulously recorded. The results would astonish both the medical community and the public. After 83 weeks inside the clinic, the transformation was almost beyond belief. As reported by Time magazine in July 1965, William Cobb walked out weighing just 232 pounds. He had lost an astonishing 570 pounds, one of the greatest documented weight loss achievements in history, and earned a place in the Guinness Book of World Records as the living person who had lost the most weight. The dramatic transformation captivated the nation. Newspapers covered his story, magazines chronicled his progress, and in September 1965, Cobb appeared on the nationally televised CBS game show I've Got a Secret. Introduced alongside an eclectic group of contestants, his secret was he had once weighed more than 800 pounds. As he revealed that he had lost 570 pounds, and joked that he once had the appetite of 15 men, the audience responded with amazement. Although he returned to professional wrestling in 1973, the business had changed. The attraction that had once filled arenas was no longer the same without the immense size that had made him a phenomenon. While he was welcomed back by many who remembered him, The momentum of the 1950s had faded, and his comeback never approached the success of his first run. Even so, Humphrey never spoke bitterly about professional wrestling. On the contrary, he often credited the industry with giving him a life he otherwise never would have experienced. He especially cherished the excitement of young fans, recalling how children would light up when they were allowed to pat his enormous belly. To him, those moments represented acceptance rather than ridicule, a rare feeling for someone who had spent so much of his life being stared at because of his appearance. Away from the ring, Cobb embraced a quieter life, working at a shoe repair shop in Augusta, Georgia. In 1975, he also appeared on the big screen in the action comedy Moonrunners, portraying the ironically named mob enforcer Tiny, alongside James Mitchum and Keel Martin. Directed by Guy Waldron, Moonrunners would later serve as the blueprint for the hit television series The Dukes of Hazzard. Despite his determination, keeping the weight off proved to be a lifelong battle. Over the years, much of it gradually returned. When William Happy Humphrey Cobb passed away on May 14, 1989, at the age of 62, he reportedly weighed around 600 pounds. For most people, Happy Humphrey is remembered simply as the 800-pound wrestler, but that description barely scratches the surface. He was a pioneer of wrestling's attraction era, the subject of one of the most extraordinary medical studies ever conducted, and a man who experienced both the highest highs of celebrity and the harshest realities of living in a body unlike almost anyone else's. His story isn't just about weight, it's about perseverance, reinvention, and finding dignity in a life that the world often viewed as a spectacle. In the end, the biggest thing about Happy Humphrey wasn't his body. It was the extraordinary life he lived.